Rae. Thank you for coming on the I'm Coming Up podcast.
Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
Yes, I'm so excited. This is the first time that I have been able to interview a writer. So I feel like and you're also a CEO. I don't want to skip that on that. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that in the list of questions that I have for you. But I first wanted to start off talking about you as a writer and your history. I was looking you up, just doing some research, of course, for this interview, and I found your transition from graphic designer to a writer very interesting. So I want to discuss that. But before we get into that, I like to start off each interview with a couple of fun favorite questions that I just came up with to ask you. And one of them might be kind of weird, but let's just roll with it and see what happens. What is your favorite worst script that you've ever written or worst anything that you've ever written that makes you laugh to this day?
Um, I don't. This is like not worse. When I started writing as a very young age, at a very young age, so I didn't get into screenwriting till I was older. But I
Hmm.
always wrote short stories. I went to an arts high school for creative writing, actually. But I remember this is like one of my earliest memories of writing something, and I had to be in kindergarten or something. Like I was very young, and I had wrote this story about how I like to drink water that was at room temperature, and it I didn't like to drink cold water. And this was like I wrote a story about this, and I called it "Some Like It Hot," and it was about how I liked hot or room temperature water. And it was just really bad. Like, why would you write something like that?
That's
But I
so
was 5. I think
adorable.
that's it
Right.
was advanced for a 5-year-old, but I just cringe. Like, why would I think this was worthy of?
Because then at age 5, that's what's going on in life. You're thinking
Yeah,
about what you like and dislike, and hot water is your thing, I guess. You still,
yeah.
so what? You like
I
buying water bottles at
I
the grocery
really
store?
don't like cold water still.
Mm,
I drink room temperature water or like slightly hot
wow.
water. I drink tea a lot, which is like hot water with some leaves in it. So,
Yeah. I mean,
uh,
tea's good for you. So you was on before we all were.
yes, I don't really like cold water. I'll drink it if there's like no other option because I feel like people will just serve you cold water. But
Yeah.
in my home, and if I had the option, just room temperature water, good for me.
Got you. So you at the restaurant, like, can I get water, no ice? type of
Yeah,
type of vibe.
pretty much. Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, fun fact. Love it. And what would you say is your favorite memory that you have from your company in the Cut LA? From all the courses that you've had, and is it like a specific guest or a boot camp that you hosted? Like, do you have one that comes to mind?
Oh, that's a great question. I recently just did my first writers retreat for In the Cut. That was in August, I think. And it was the first time I've done a writers retreat, and we did it in Palm Springs. And it was
Ooh,
just such a beautiful time. I didn't really know what to expect. If you, I didn't know any of these people either. So it's like if you have a bunch of strangers show up on a vacation, it could go really well or it could go really bad. Like you don't know if everyone's going to get along with each other. It was very intimate. There was only like 12 people there, but everyone got along really well, and it was such a beautiful place to connect and meet people. So far, doing that writers retreat is my favorite.
awesome. I'm gonna have to ask you more about that later because I need to know more about how that came about, what y'all did. You're in Palm Springs. It sounds like a resort and a vibe. Maybe not a resort, but it
Yes,
definitely sounds like a vibe. So that's
yes.
awesome. I love it. So yes, like I said, I want to start off asking questions about your career as a writer and coming up in the industry because I do have friends who are writers It's been hard for me to call myself a writer because I've only written one short film that I've directed. But I'm just like, I mean, I'll be writing, so I guess am I a writer? Whatever.
Yes, you
You
are a
know,
writer. If
trying
you
to
write, you're a writer.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
That's what everyone says, but I guess it feels better coming from a writer, so I appreciate it. So what made you even want to become a writer? You said you didn't start till later in life.
Yeah, I mean, I'd always written throughout childhood. Like I just like to make up things. You know, my mom really encouraged me to write from a very young age, but I didn't really think of writing as a career, if that makes sense. It was just something I did since I was a kid. It was a hobby. But I knew that I didn't really want to write books, even though I read a lot of books. I just was not interested in writing long format things. So I thought, if I don't want to be an author, then essentially I can't be a writer. I really had no other type of context as to what writers could do besides write books. And so writing was just a hobby for me. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, actually. So I went to
Mm.
college, I majored in political science, and then I had an internship at Fox doing entertainment law, and it was like the most boring thing I've ever done in my life. And the only time I had fun is that I had to go to the lot a lot of times to deliver paperworks and get stuff signed. And I just found myself just lurking around and watching things being filmed. That was the only part I enjoyed of doing this internship, was just being near the set and getting to watch movies for free and all that kind of stuff. So that sort of inspired me to take a screenwriting elective. And that's when I understood for the first time that, like, oh, you don't just have, there's different types of writers. I don't have to just write books to be a fiction writer. And taking that class really opened my eyes, and I knew, this is what I want to do. Actually, I don't want to be a lawyer, I want to do this. But it was my junior year in college. I wasn't about to change my major, so I didn't really know how to make a career of it. I considered going to film school, but I graduated in 2009, which was like the height of the financial recession, and
Mm-hmm.
we're like economic collapse. So I
Mm-hmm.
went to meet with the dean of my film school, and he was cool. He basically was like, I in good faith cannot tell you to go to film school at this time unless you have money. Like, you're just going to go in a large amount of debt, and it's sort of unnecessary. He's like, if you want to be a screenwriter, no one cares if you went to school for it. It's all about your networking and your craft. So keep practicing, keep writing scripts that will improve your craft, and keep networking, and that's how you'll get jobs. And I only did one of those things. I did keep writing, but I didn't network or meet anyone that knew anything about writing. So I still didn't know, and I became a graphic designer, and uh, that was my job. And actually, I was working as a graphic designer when I met this girl that sat next to me, and she actually wanted to be a screenwriter. And I befriended her, and she was sort of telling me, like, oh, these are ways you can be a screenwriter, you can be a writer's assistant, you can. She was basically giving me entry level jobs and telling me about a writer's room. I didn't know what any of this stuff was. And so once I got that information from her, I was like, okay, now that I have sort of a pathway on how I can feasibly do this, I'm going to take it seriously. I quit working full time as a graphic designer so I could have time to focus on my writing. And that was like in 2018. So in January 2018, I'd set the intention that by the end of the year, I will have a job in the industry, even though I didn't know how that was going to happen or know anyone that could get me those jobs. In about February, I was fortunate enough to join a mentorship program that was started by Lena Waithe, and she basically,
Hillman grad?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yes,
But
yes.
I was in Hillman grad like long time ago, 2018. So it wasn't really a formalized thing you
Mm.
had to apply to like it is now. It was sort of just you just could just DM Lena and be like, "Oh, can I be
Oh.
a mentor?" Like that's basically how it was. It was a while ago.
Uh-huh.
Um, I was able to join that and meet other writers, and Lena's assistant at the time told me about the writer's assistant job on Bridgerton, which I had to have a writing sample for and interview and do all the things. But I found out about that job through
Wow.
Lena's assistant, and by October, I got my first job as a writer's assistant.
So
So
you got to skip being a writer's PA.
yeah,
That is
yeah.
amazing. That is great. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
people, uh-huh.
I was a PA for 10 days on a
Child,
pilot.
you could basically okay.
But yeah, basically, yeah.
No, but like I think that's dope because a lot of people talk about how hard it is to go from you're a writer's PA for years before someone even gives you the opportunity to be a writer's assistant. Because a writer's assistant, you're in the room sometimes, right?
Yeah,
Or all the time.
all the time, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing that you were able to like that was your first like opportunity. I love that. Congratulations. So, were you a writer's assistant before you were a script coordinator?
Yes. So my first well, I guess my very first job, technically, I was an office PA on a pilot for like 10 days on one of Lena's pilot's
Mm-hmm.
20s. And then, but my first actual not for a few days job. I was a writer's assistant on season 1 of Bridgerton, and then after that ended, I was a script coordinator on season 2 of The Witcher and also on Our Flag Means Death on HBO Max, and then I
Okay.
got staffed as a writer on season 3 of The Witcher, so I had to actually quit working on Our Flag in the middle of production so I could go be a writer on The Witcher.
I love that. Okay, so let's back up. Let's talk about how you got the writer's assistant job. So what do they ask for? And I'm trying to make sure like when I interview people on this podcast that I ask like the basic questions because there are a lot of people that like need to know the basics before we get into like dialogue that's like over everyone's head. So, what
Yeah.
are people or what has your experience been that people ask for as far as material that they're looking for in order to get you into the room as a writer's assistant?
Yeah, well, even just to take it a step further back, there's people that don't know like what a writer's assistant even does.
Right, right.
A writer's assistant is there in the writer's room to take notes of all the things that the writers say. Um, Basically, a writer's room is a long meeting. That's how I describe it. Every day, the writers of the television show are coming together to pitch ideas and decide what's going to happen in each episode of the show. And writers are meeting from anywhere from 6 to 12 hours sometimes a day and talking a lot. So it's hard for them to keep track of everything. So, writer's assistant, your job is really to take organized and helpful notes for the writers to refer back to when it's time to actually write their episode. So,
Okay. So how do you I assume see, I ain't never been in a room, so you just gonna have to explain.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I assume there's like I just visualize a whole table of writers and
Mhm.
they're spitballing ideas out. How do you take notes of all this dialogue that's around you? That's what I'm like, what like,
It
you know
can
what I
be
mean?
a lot, to be honest. It can be a lot. And as for me as a writer's assistant, my goal is never to transcribe every single word. Like, you're not
Mm,
a court stenographer, and there's no way you can because there will be on Bridgerton, there was 8 writers, some rooms are larger than that. So imagine if 8 to 15 people are having a conversation at one time.
it's a
It's
lot.
gonna be hard to get all of that. So I would, organize the notes in terms of topics and
Mm.
make sure I'm getting the general gist of the ideas. I'm not writing every single down because that's also not helpful for writers to refer back to if it's just like a word vomit of everything. I would always organize my notes by topic. The only times it was important to get verbatim down is if they're making a specific dialogue pitch, like this character
Mm.
should say this thing, then you want to make sure you're getting that down. But if they're just generally talking about ideas of what could happen, as long as you summarize it, that's good enough.
So do they meet so they meet when they're obviously pitching the idea for the first and second or what however I guess each episode you have to meet for the beginning like pitch of like this is what we want the episode to be like. But then when someone is assigned to write that episode, then what are your meetings about? Are your meetings about like just the revisions and people are pitching what could be better for each revision?
So the structure of a room, you're meeting every day for a number of weeks. It differs between network TV and streamers and cable because there's more episodes of television on a network show. So you're meeting for more weeks. A standard sort of streamer or cable room is 20 weeks. Sometimes they're shorter in what they call mini rooms, and it might be shorter than 20 weeks, but let's just go with 20-week standard. So out of those 20 weeks, you're meeting every day. The first couple weeks are what is called blue skying, and that's sort of you're just throwing out general ideas of what could happen for the entire season. So very large character arcs, very large brainstorming pretty much. And you
Mhm.
do that until you can get a rough sketch of what you want to happen each episode. And then you'll go episode by episode and pitch what happens in that episode. Whoever is assigned to write that episode will then go off and write an outline for an episode. While that person's off, everyone else is still meeting every day and discussing the next episode. So pretty much whoever is assigned to write that episode, they just go away and everything else is still continuing when that person's not there. That's also why it's important for the writer's assistant to take good notes so when they're gone, they can read the notes and understand what's been happening in their absence. But usually, whoever's assigned to write an episode, they'll go off, write the outline, they'll get notes from all the writers, rewrite the outline, which then goes to the studio and the network. You'll get notes from them, and you'll use those notes to write your first draft of the script. And
Mhm.
again, you'll turn the first draft into the other writers. They'll give you feedback, and then you'll write another draft, turn that into Studio Network, repeat the same thing for the second draft, and then that's done.
Got you. Okay. Interesting. Might be a weird question. I don't like to say dumb question, but just a little weird. Do they ever ask like the writer's assistants to like their opinions about anything, or is that like
Yeah.
a no no? Like you don't.
No, it's very dependent on the showrunner. The
Mm-hmm.
showrunner is the boss of the show most of the time, not all of the time, but most of the time they're the creator of the show as well. They wrote the pilot. They're the ones who sold the show to the network. So they, are the leaders and stewards of the show. And really, as a writer, you're helping to execute that showrunner's vision of what their show should look like.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, it's really up to them. On all the rooms that I've been in, I've had very gracious showrunners where writers' assistants are allowed to pitch ideas, sometimes even write episodes on The Witcher.
Oh
Both
wow.
both the writers' assistants for season 2 and season 3 got to co-write an episode. And I've had friends who are writers' assistants get to write or co-write an episode.
So do they
It really
present that? Sorry.
Oh no,
Is it just like a natural conversation that comes up? They're like, hey, you want
it's
to do this?
just up to the showrunner's discretion, really.
Mm.
Like, there's some rooms where, as a writer's assistant, they might not want you to pitch your ideas and not want you to say anything. It really is just dependent on that individual. There's no
Like if they're
sort of
the ones
stay
that's
there.
like, "Hey, Ray, do you have any ideas? Would love to hear what you think." That's how I guess I'm asking so for people who when they become writers assistants, they know like I guess the etiquette. Like, do you just let the showrunner create that conversation or do you just ask them like on the
I
side
think
like,
you should be proactive and ask that in an interview. Personally,
"Ah,
I wouldn't
okay."
wanna work for anyone who wouldn't allow me to speak. Like, that's just me.
Ooh.
I just think that's a waste of your time, to be honest, and
Mm.
I think a lot of people get trapped being assistants for too long. Like you spoke of someone being a writer as a PA for however many years. Like, in my opinion, I don't think anyone should be an assistant for more than 3 years,
Mhm.
and that's all types of like total.
Mhm.
I don't think like you could do it. There, I know people, but like for me, I also had the mentality. I had a whole different other career. I'm too old for this. Like I'm not trying to get staff when I'm 40 because I didn't start to become a writer's assistant until I was 29 or whatever. I don't have time to do this for 10 years. So for
Mhm.
me, I'm very strategic and I'm only going to work for people that allow me to learn and to speak and to grow, or what is the point of doing this?
I think that's great advice because it makes sense because when you do have a job, you do wanna make sure that you have a plan or you can see the road ahead. You can see, okay, this is where I'm going to go. This is where this job is going to take me. And yeah, if you don't have someone that's going to help you elevate, then you're going to be stuck in a sense. So, I think that makes sense. Is there any other room etiquette advice that you have for people who want to be in like a writer's assistant being in the room?
Yeah, I would say, like I said, I think in the interview stage, you should be asking all of these questions. I think you should
Mm,
ask, uh, is it okay if I contribute in the room? How do you expect, what type of notes do you like? Is there an example of notes from a previous show that you worked on that I can see? You want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success in asking questions that would help you. Is there room for opportunity? Could I write an episode? Could I go to set and shadow and see what's happening? Like, you're perfectly allowed to ask any of these questions. And if you don't like the answers, you also don't have to work for that person. I think that we take for granted that saying no is sometimes the most powerful thing that you can do. I've said no to opportunities a lot, and I didn't really have the money to say no, but sometimes your mental health and self-worth to me is worth way more than any amount of money that you're paid. So I would just ask questions. And also, but that doesn't mean that as a writer's assistant, day one, you're gung ho, like, let me pitch all my ideas, let me do all this. That is not your job. If you're
mhm.
a writer's assistant, your job is to take notes. So do your job with excellence first and foremost, which is taking notes. And then once you do that job with excellence, then you can start, doing other things. But I always tell people, even if you're staffed as a writer, if it's your first time being a staff writer, I always prefer to just kick back and observe things for a couple weeks before I assert myself, because part of being a writer is really having emotional intelligence a lot of time and knowing when to speak, when to press a point, when to back off, which I don't think a lot of people realize. Like that timeline I gave earlier of the 20 weeks, if you notice, like you're writing a very short amount of time. Even out of those whole 20 weeks, you might actually spend 3 or 4 weeks actually writing a script. So most of the time you're not writing. Most of the time you're talking about writing, interacting with other people, even taking meetings on other projects, developing things. So as a writer, I would say a, a very small fraction of my time is actually spent writing. So just developing emotional intelligence is really key. And that's something I didn't. realize before.
I think that's real. I mean, basically you're saying like read the room. Like
Yes, yes.
read the room, fill it out, fill out when is a good time to yeah, speak up. Maybe at a moment there's awkward silence and they need someone to say something, then you jump in and you're like, I have an idea. So I think that's great advice. So I also wanted to ask, because I always like to make sure I put like this question out there, especially this podcast is about for black people and people of color. Like how has your experience been being a black woman as a writer's assistant in these spaces that I assume are predominantly white, even if you are working on a show like Bridgerton and The Witcher? I assume that the spaces might be predominantly white, or correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I would say Bridgerton, yes. It was weird because I felt like all the assistants were black women. So, like
Oh wait,
me,
yeah,
Shaniqua was
Shaniqua, you.
the
Mhm.
writer's PA. There was a researcher on the show, or people of color, and we had a one black woman writer and a Asian woman writer. So me
Okay.
personally on that show, I spent most of my time with the other assistants who were other black women. So it wasn't that honestly,
That's
I felt right at
amazing.
it. But and The Witcher is also very inclusive. Um
That's
uh,
great.
I would say we have lots. There's a black man that's a writer on the show, me, a South Asian woman, like several Latina assistants. So I feel um, I've never been like the only non-white person ever.
That's good. That's good. And I think it's probably also the time that you started your writing career is around that time where, and I mean, I guess essentially you're working on Netflix shows. So Netflix, if I really think about it, they do their best to make sure things are more inclusive now that I think about it. So that's great that
Yeah, I
you've
would
had that
say
experience.
me personally, I haven't had any negative experiences, though I have friends that have had those experiences.
Hmm.
And that's also why I said ask questions in an interview. Like, I'm very deliberate about who I choose to work for, to be honest.
Good.
And I think that we all can be. And I know sometimes, especially when you're starting out as an assistant, like the jobs don't pay very well. And you can be in sort of scarcity mode where you're like, I think I need to take this job, but you don't actually. Like, you can not do that. Like Shaniqua, you brought her up. She's someone I really admire because after Bridgerton, she said, I need a break. I don't want to deal with this. And she moved back home to Florida and she was still able to flourish there. And now she's working on P Valley and
Hmm.
it's such a great situation. But that's because she chose to step away and say no to things that weren't fulfilling her and
Yep.
something better came along. So I firmly believe like we don't have to say yes. Like if you're in a situation where people are treating you poorly, leave. Like really leave. You can do something else. There's always something else for you.
Absolutely. I think what you said is great advice because we do have to remember that we're not the only ones being interviewed. We're also interviewing them, and
Yes.
and we don't think about that when we're coming up in our careers and we're not like, the was it they call it the bottom line, below the line,
Mhm.
type of career titles, and we think, okay, well, we're just desperate. Like money is tight and LA is expensive and I'm trying to pay rent and I need this job. But I 100% agree that your mental health is more important and you want to make sure you go to work every day happy about the job that you have and you like the coworkers because you're around them more than you're around most of your friends and family. So
Exactly.
these are
So
facts.
just say no.
Yes, exactly. So so you became a script coordinator after your first writer's assistant gig?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so what is the job of a script coordinator? Because I noticed that there are most script coordinators like aspiring writers as well. right?
Yes.
Okay.
So a script coordinator is a very technical job, I would say. Your job is basically to proofread and prepare the script file and send it to anyone who needs to send it. So that's the studio, the network, other writers, cast, and crew members. But it gets technical because when you're in production, there's a certain way the scenes have to be numbered and the pages have to be numbered and
Mm,
stuff like that that is boring, so I'm not going to go into detail about it. But and also you have to have very strong knowledge of script formatting and making sure everything's formatted properly before it goes out. You'll also, as script coordinator, have to speak with the legal team sometimes about clearance issues. I didn't have to do that too often because I was a script coordinator on basically like fantasy shows and period piece, which there's not that many legal issues because everything's kind of made up.
right.
But if you were on like a regular show, say one character drinks a can of Coke and it says in the script, and the lawyer would have to go to Coke and get permission from Coke to allow that in the script
Mm,
or whatever, that sort of thing. On The Witcher, the only sort of licensing issues I would sometimes have to deal with the lawyers about is that we had the rights to the books that the show is based upon, but not on the video game. So I had to make sure that stuff that we were creating came only from the books or from something that we just made up ourselves and not from the video game. So I had to talk with him about that sort of stuff.
oh wow. So you had to like you have to be the one to pinpoint out, like point it out, like, oh, we gotta like, or is somebody telling you like, oh,
It's
can
not
we check in?
that severe. It's more like sometimes the lawyers would reach out to me and be like, "Hey, is it this name? Is this a name that you guys made up yourself, or where did
Okay.
this character from? Oh, this is a character we made up." Stuff like that. Uh,
Got you.
or
Oh
just
wow.
alerting the lawyer, like, "Hey, heads up, this might be an issue."
Wow. You know what? I'm not even gonna lie. I just thought a script coordinator was mainly like making sure the script pages were in order and like, yeah, like every time there was a rewrite that the information was put out
Yeah,
to the
I do
crew.
that too. Do that
Okay,
too.
but okay. You mentioning the lawyer part, I was like, oh,
Yeah,
I didn't know
yeah.
they
You
did
also
that.
have to coordinate with the legal department for clearance issues.
Got you. So how did you get your staff writing job? Like, how does that work? Do people just recognize your talent when you're in the room as a writer's assistant pitching ideas and then they're like, "Hey, can I see a script that you've written to be a staff like writer?" Like, how does that happen?
I mean, that's how it should work in an ideal world, but
Okay, I
it
just
doesn't
created a
work.
beautiful fantasy.
It doesn't work like that for everyone.
Right.
Luckily, I have a very wonderful, gracious boss at The Witcher. The showrunner is Lauren Hisrick, and she's a great person that promotes basically all of the assistants. I would say our staff now is like half people that used to be assistants on the show. And that's
Amazing.
because she promotes people and recognizes talent. But I think that's rare. Unfortunately, I think it's rare that you do get promoted like that. A lot of people I know that have been former assistants, they did eventually get staff, but it's not always on the show that they worked on. It's just through networking in craft. Like I would repeat what the dean told me at the LMU film school. It's so true that everything boils down to networking and craft. I personally really enjoyed being a writer's assistant. It improved my writing tremendously, just being able to see how professional writers craft a story and structure and the amount of thought that went into it. I am someone that didn't go to film school. I only took that one screenwriting elective
Right.
at LSU, and I'm largely self-taught. So when I worked on Bridgerton, it made me realize, oh, I've written every script wrong that I've written. And after that, I went back and rewrote everything that I had written. So to me, that experience of being a writer's assistant was really like my film school, and I'm getting paid, no, not that much, but I was getting paid to essentially learn. And so I found it really valuable, but it also expanded my network. The reason I got my job on The Witcher is because one of the writers on Bridgerton had heard about the job and she had recommended me. So that's like a direct result of that job. And then I became a script coordinator on The Witcher. And then the next season, my boss promoted me. But that's like a direct consequence of me being a good writer's assistant and someone recognizing that and moving got me my next job, you know.
That's awesome. Good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
I
you're
would
right.
say that, oh, sorry, you
No,
go.
no, keep going, keep going.
Oh, I was just saying, I think that's how most people, a lot of people I know are former assistants that are writers. I think every single person in my room on The Witcher, including the showrunner, was used to be an assistant. So it's definitely not the only way you can do things, especially now with the internet. You know, you can create a web series, you can have a short film, you could have IP. One of my friends who's a staff writer, she literally got staffed because of Twitter. Because she, during the pandemic, there was all of these sort of initiatives, I think, to read Black writers that, you
Of
know, have
course. Yeah.
mysteriously
Yeah.
disappeared now.
That was a time. I remember that time when they were
But it
so
was a
hyped to get
come up.
everyone.
Yeah, and that's what I was telling people. I'm like, you know, the white folk are feeling guilty now. It's their time to come up. I was telling everyone it's come up time. Be
Right.
prepared. So,
Get your
uh,
scripts ready, guys.
yeah. So one of my friends, you know, she was in one of these programs and got paired with some sort of exec and who read her work and thought it was good and got her an agent, basically passed her work along to an agent, and that agent got her staffed on the show. So that all became about because of Twitter. So I think there are so many different ways and paths to get staffed, but it just ultimately boils down to the same ingredients, which is networking and just being great at your craft. And there's just a variety of ways to network. For me, my network was becoming an assistant. That was really the only way I was going to have access to professional writers, is working with them. But that's not the only way, you know?
Yeah, I think your path is cool because I also didn't go to film school and I also was asking people like, do I need to? I really don't want to go back to school again. But yeah, no, someone also gave me that advice and was like, you just need to do it. Just go to LA and just do the work and you'll be fine. And I feel like more people do need to hear that because college is way too expensive. If you don't have to go to film school, don't try out the route not going, I think, first. And then if that's not working, if you feel like you need a lot more education, then all right, go do that. You know, different things for different people. So I think what also is cool is that you do have people in your life who are vouching for you. And I think it's refreshing that people need to hear that those type of people do exist, you know. So
Yeah.
people are looking out
Basically,
for you.
yeah, I feel like this industry is very word of mouth based, even to become a writer's assistant. I found out about that job because Shaniqua had put the word out to Lena's assistant and said, hey, we're trying to find a writer's assistant. Do you know anyone that would be helpful? And Lena's assistant recommended me. And
Wow.
that's how I would have never found, I didn't get the job because of that. There was a bunch of other people interviewing, you know,
Obviously. Right,
but
right, right.
I wouldn't have even found out about the job if it was, unless it was for that. And unfortunately, or, you know, it's just how it is. These jobs are not publicly posted anywhere, I would say 99% of the time. So it's really, you do have to network and know people who know. That's sort of the only way you'll get in.
Right, right, exactly. Networking is a big part of LA. And I just say the industry in general. I mean, you know, Shanique was showing us that LA ain't just the way. Like she out here in Florida getting it done on a dope show. The last
Yeah.
question I have focusing on this writer's topic is I saw that, or are you still repped by UTA?
Yes.
Okay. So I feel like it would be good for us to discuss like how finding a rep, you know, works and how beneficial it is to have representation to get staffed on a show. So can you tell us how that came about? UTA.
Yeah, I personally, my thing about finding reps is don't worry about it. I always tell people that, which it seems counterintuitive, but in my opinion, reps will find you when you need a rep. You don't have to search for them. A Here's my reasons why. No valuable company or reputable company is going to take unsolicited submissions, meaning you can't just email UTA, you can't just email CAA and be like, oh, I have a script, read it. That's not how they work. So you're trying to find someone is not going to work because any well-known company is not going to take something that's unsolicited. So most people get reps through word of mouth. That's how I got my reps. I was an assistant on The Witcher. A couple of the writers asked, "Can I read your work?" And they liked it and sent it along to people. And I also have a web series, and a management company saw my web series and wanted to meet with me based on that. So literally in 1 week, I went from having no reps, having no prospects, nothing, to the next week, three different management companies were wanted to meet with me. But I wasn't trying to find them. I was just prepared and they found me when it was ready for me to find them. And I think that also puts you in a better position bargaining wise to where you're not so desperate to get a rep. I think that writers especially put too much worth on getting reps, in my opinion. Reps work for you, not the other way around. So there shouldn't
Mm,
be some desperate energy of like, oh, I need one. You need people to work for you. Like if you think of it that way, it's like why? They work for you, not the other way around. I didn't get staff because of my reps. I got staff because my boss promoted me. I would have gotten
right.
staffed whether or not I had reps. That was completely irrelevant.
That's
And
I like
this
that. I like that you said that because so many people talk about like I need to be yeah, I need to find representation because isn't it that people think that or maybe it is true, but a lot of people focus on I won't get great jobs unless I have good representation to vouch for me for my scripts. Isn't that the point of having a rep?
I feel like if your goal is to be staffed, you don't need reps. If your goal is to sell shows, I think reps are helpful because again, networks and
Mm,
studios don't take unsolicited submissions.
got
So
you.
it's
Okay.
hard to set a pitch meeting unless you have reps to set those for you. But to be
Okay.
staffed, I think a recent WGA survey, this was before the whole thing with the agencies happened. If you don't know, a few years ago, there was a dispute with agencies about the amount of fees they were taking through something called packaging. So the writers essentially all fired their agents until this was solved. So for about and this was when UTA first approached me was during this time. I actually said no to being repped by UTA because this was during this agency dispute. And I was like, well, if I hire you and you get me a job, I'll just have to fire you anyway. So, like, what is the
Right.
point of this? I saw no value. But, uh, so during that time, there was a survey taken, and about 70%, I believe there was a number of writers in the WGA so that they got their latest staffing job because of a personal connection, not their reps. So
Mm,
70%, that's extremely high. And I would say that's the case for a similar amount of writers I know. Most people are getting staff because they're friends with the showrunner or friends with another writer on the show. these are the reasons people get staffed, not always because you have an agent. And I love my agents. I love UTA. Also have a manager. I love them, but I think if your goal is just to get staffed, I don't know if having an agent it can help you. Like I said, there's plenty of people that do get staffed because of having an agent, but it's not necessary. As I said, the numbers of like 70% of people
That's
are
so
getting
high.
staffed.
Wow.
Yeah, that's extremely high. I got staffed, like I said, because I got promoted, not because of my agent.
I think it's important that people do hear that though, so that they know that there isn't one way. Because I think it's so easy in this industry to think that there's one way to get a job, and
No, there's
you know,
no one way to do anything. And so
yeah,
I was like,
yeah,
every person you meet, I feel like they'll have a different story of how they were able to achieve something.
yeah.
Uh, there's so many different ways, there's so many different pathways. I share my story not to say this is the way to do it, it's just a way to do it. And you can do it a completely different way, and that's valid. So I think that agents will find you when you are ready to have them, and once they're finding you, it also puts you in a better position for them to even care and work for you. Also, as a newer writer, I hear so many stories about their reps not doing anything for them because
Yes,
they're young, they're not bringing in any money because they're new writers, so they're less compelled to do anything for you, which is ironic because I would think that
you think the
I don't
opposite,
have a job, so you should be working harder to get
right?
me a job, but they
Right.
work harder for people that are already established, which makes no sense to me. But hey, so
Yeah,
I know
yeah.
so many people also that were people that were staff writers or still assistants and hadn't been staff yet that did have reps. And the reps, one of my friends said his agent would not even answer his calls, hadn't spoken to his reps in months. Like this
Oh,
is real. So that
sound like I need to fire somebody.
yeah, I have a friend now who's going through that same thing with her manager. Like, manager doesn't return their calls. And then, but once my friend was in a position to make some money, that happened through nothing the manager did. Then they
Uh-uh.
pop up, oh, let's do this. Like, when they
No,
think some money's about to be made, fire that person. Like, that's
exactly.
absurd.
You won't get a cut of
Again,
this. Shoot.
yes, these people work for you, not the other way around, and you
Yes.
should be putting them to work.
Yes.
I frequently like ask my manager agent, "Hey, can you set this meeting up for me? Hey, can you do this? Can you do that?" Like that's their job. If
Right.
they're not
Right.
doing their job, fire them.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And
And I will say real quick, because I want to make sure we talk about in the cut and people know about this. I will say real quick from this conversation already, like I can just tell that you're a person that knows their worth. Like, I don't know if you've always been like that, but what, at least our interaction, that's the vibe that like you're definitely giving. And I think that's just very important in life. Like you know your worth and you know, and you seem like a confident person in who you are. So I think that's beautiful, especially it's important to have as a Black woman out here making things happen. So just want to say that I see that in you and I like that about you.
of
So
course, thank you,
yeah,
thank
you're
you.
you're welcome. So yes, let's talk about In the Cut LA. You are the creator, the founder, the CEO. You are it. And and yeah, so when Yuli told me about you and she said that yeah, she created In the Cut LA, I was like, I took one of those courses when just so you know. So I when I was writing my short film last year, last year
Mhm,
what is time these days, but I'm pretty sure yes, last year my girl Brittany was like, hey, we should take this producer's course I see that In the Cut LA has, and I was like, oh dope, Denise Davis, I know Denise Davis, that's great. So she gave great advice, even provided, I'm pretty sure, the PowerPoint like at the
mhm.
end of the class so that we could look at it for notes. And I found it so beneficial because we were literally in the process of trying to learn how to produce. So she gave like the basics, and that's exactly what we needed. And we felt like it was very helpful. And for in the future when we want to produce bigger projects. So I just want to say I think these courses and these classes are very beneficial. But can you tell us what is In the Cut LA and how did you start your company?
Yeah, so In the Cut is a company that provides education and training and other resources for Black creatives and other people of color interested in writing and filmmaking. I started In the Cut because, as I said, I didn't go to film school. I actually am from LA, but I still had no idea of how to become a TV writer from here, but I'm a regular person from here. Like, I don't know any famous people, no one in my like my family. People in my family work for the DWP, not NBC. So I really didn't understand any of this, and I figured if it was this hard for me to understand how to get involved in this business and I'm from here, then it must be hard for other people as well. So I always thought once I get some information, I want to figure out how I can disseminate this information to other people. So I started In the Cut when I was still an assistant, actually. And it first started as a live event where I just had myself and other assistants or staff writers come and talk to people, but not in a panel setting. It was sort of I called them a workshop because instead of having panelists sit on the stage, they would just sit in small groups of the attendees and have actual conversations. And then each panelist would rotate groups every 15 minutes so everyone got to speak. And it went really well and it was a success. And I was planning my next event, but then the pandemic happened and I had to cancel that event. And so I
Mm.
did a webinar. I refunded everyone their money back and did sort of a webinar as a replacement event for the the event that I had to cancel. And it went so well, people kept saying, "Oh, can you keep doing this?" So then I just started doing more online classes and events for people. And it's so strange because I never intended my business to be like an online business, but I just had to adapt to that, and it was really a blessing in disguise as it allowed me to reach way more people doing online classes. Like we've had people from Australia and South Africa
Oh,
and London
wow.
and all over the country join these classes, which would not have happened if I was just doing my in-person events in LA.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's how it started.
The power of the internet, child. The power of the internet. That's awesome. So what is the benefits of being like a member? Because you can be a member. Yeah.
Yeah, so I do live events every month. I am sort of revamping my business model, so I I
Okay.
don't know if this will probably not be true in a few months, so you might want to cut this out.
Okay.
But basically, if you're a premium member, you'll get access to all of our webinars. We do at least once a month, so if you'll get free signups to any webinar we do, plus you'll have unlimited replay access to our library of past webinars, which is about we have about 40, I think now. As you said, we've done webinars with people like Denise Davis, who's a producer on Insecure and Black Lady Sketch Show, and now Rap Shit. We've had ones with Charla Sumter Bridget, who is a VP at Churnin Entertainment. We had one with the VP at Showtime, Danielle De Jesus. And I try, well, I don't try, I do one every month, but I also am a writer full time. So this is a lot for
Right.
me to do. So I am sort of vamping In the Cut, and I'm going to start doing more pre-recorded sort of things that people can just have access to instead of me having to think of new live events to do every single month.
That makes sense. That makes sense. I mean, that's so funny you said it because that was one of the questions I was going to ask. Like, how do you find time to do all this?
It's just a lot, mama.
Yeah. Time management, boundaries, I'm sure all of that. Yeah, you're learning as you're doing this. So, and this is a young company. Has it even been
Yeah.
2 years? Yeah, 2 years?
Yes, yeah, it has now. It's been like two
Yeah,
and a
two and a
half years.
half.
I started January 2020.
2020. Yeah, yeah. So, what's up with this writers boot camp? Because it sounds like something I would love to attend.
Oh, the retreat.
Or the retreat. Okay.
Yeah, so I did that's my first time doing a retreat. Basically, had this boutique sort of hotel that was very small in Palm Springs. There's 7 rooms, and I had, like I said, it was around 12 writers, and we all just had the retreat to ourselves. There was workshops where we would discuss sort of different topics. I had my friend Nadra join me, who is also a great writer, and we did workshops on different topics. One was sort of the business of writing, and it was talking about all of the meetings you'll have to take as a writer and preparing people for more the behind the scenes aspects of being a professional writer, not just about writing. We had a workshop on character development, but we also had plenty of free time to write, lounge by the pool. We did a sound meditation and just lots of fun writing and learning and good vibes. So
Nice.
it was a success. It I didn't know what to expect, so I wanted to keep it very small. But we had about 60 people on the waiting list, and I
Oh
only had
wow.
14 spots. A couple people canceled at the last minute, so there ended up only being 12 people. But I do want to make it like a annual thing, maybe even a couple times a year if people like it. So I'm planning to do it at a bigger venue next year so
Good for
more people
you.
can.
That's awesome. So is it members only? Like you have to be a member
No,
to
no,
be
anyone can
got you.
turn up. It turned out to be sort of members only because also one of the benefits of premium events is a lot of my classes and events do sell out quickly. So I
Mm,
always post it in the premium groups first so that they'll have first come, first serve access. And I didn't even get to send an email out or even really post about it on Instagram because it was already sold out like in a day, which I wasn't expecting
that's
that. But
amazing.
there weren't that many spots either. But yeah, I just didn't. I wasn't expecting that.
That's amazing. And by the way, side note, your classes are very affordable. Like,
Yes, yeah.
yeah, I remember when we took it last year, I was like, oh, this is cheap. Or I can't even remember. It
I
might have
think
even
it
been
was
free.
free. Yeah, the one with
Yeah.
Denise, I it was free.
Yes, it definitely was free. But you have one coming up that's $15 only, just so people I want people to know this is an affordable situation for most. And it's about time management for writers, which I think is a great thing. So a great topic to talk about. So people should go sign up.
Yes.
And
Oh, do you mind if I talk about my podcast? I
please, I didn't even know you had one. Promote
yeah.
yourself.
Yeah, so I have a scripted podcast that I co-created with my friend Al Planche, who's Haitian, and
Mhm.
it's a period piece that takes place in Haiti, and it's about the Haitian royal court in the 1800s, and it follows a young seamstress who's sort of very turned off by the idea of royalty in the Haitian court, but she's forced to work in the home of a member of nobility to raise money to help out her family and sort of just gets sucked into this world and ends up eventually, becoming like these people that she hated. And it's sort of just our sort of themes were about power and the cyclical nature of revolution, and about how a lot oftentimes people who are oppressed, once they're able to overthrow their oppressor, sometimes adopt the same
Mm.
tactics as their oppressor, which leads to their downfall, and the cycle just continues. So I'm really proud of this podcast. We're going to launch it in November, and it should be available wherever you can listen to podcasts.
What is it
It's
called?
called Prestige, and the
Prestige.
website is prestigepod.com, and our Instagrams at prestigepod if you want to follow us and keep up to date with it. But I'm just
Yes.
really happy about it because that's something we initially conceived of as a TV show. But again, even though I am a writer on a TV show, I'm still like a lower level writer. So it's hard to sell shows and get people to
Right.
care at all levels. I think that there's also a misconception, especially, when I was like an assistant, you think, oh, I just need to get staffed and that's it. But no, you get staffed and then you might not ever get staffed again, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Like being a writer is like being you are a freelancer, like essentially. So I also tell people that being a writer, you have to be uncomfortable. It's not a stable job. It's a job that you could have. It lasts for a few months. You need to get another job, especially if you're not on a network show. You might be on a show that gets canceled and never comes out. It's just very unstable. So you have to be comfortable with that. But we thought of this show as a TV show, and it's just hard to get people to want to spend lots of money on a Haitian period piece,
I
especially when
mean,
you're
yeah.
yeah.
But I
So
think it sounds like a great idea. Like it
yeah.
sounds like, and I love that. Wait, so it's scripted, meaning like y'all are y'all are reading your script while
Well, not me. We
like
have
the
actors. Yeah, yeah,
actors,
yeah.
the actors.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's like an audio drama. So it's acted. We
Right.
have a really great sound designer do all the sound design for us to make it feel very immersive, like you're actually there. So, we couldn't produce, a TV show on our own on our a budget, but we actually did crowdfunding to be able to raise the money to record the podcast. So we're very excited and proud to
Wow.
launch it.
That's amazing. Good for you. Cause listen, you never know. Cause you never know who's like just who's put on. Like someone puts it, oh yeah, someone put me on to your podcast. And I know someone who works in a studio. Like you just never know. It could happen that like this eventually becomes a TV show from being a podcast.
Yeah. We
So
were just like, we're very passionate about telling Black stories and giving positive, non trauma based representations of history,
right.
especially. I feel like you don't really see that much. And so it was important for us to get this project out any way that we can. If that meant we had to do it ourselves, and that's what we had to do.
Right. Good for you. Good for you. I'm going to be one of the listeners, so I'll have to subscribe to that. Look out for it. Follow the Instagram page. Um,
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, so I don't hold you because I know we all have a busy day. So I just wanted to ask just like three more questions. What is, as a CEO, what is the biggest lesson that you've learned so far working as a CEO for In the Cut LA, but then also the biggest lesson you've learned as a writer coming up in the industry?
Yeah, I would say the biggest lesson I've learned as a CEO is definitely you need to be able to adapt, uh, and be able to change things quickly and not be set in your ways, because the only thing constant is change. As I said, I basically launched my business during the pandemic, which was insane. And I launched my business completely, my business is basically not at all what I thought it was going to be. I wanted this business to be a live event. That was my original intent. Now it's become an online training company. We started doing live events recently again, but 99% of things I do are online. And that was I was only to keep able to keep my business sustainable by adapting my business into a format that frankly I didn't really know anything about, but I learned as I was going. And I don't know if this is the best advice to give, but I just sort of do things and figure it out later. I don't know if other people would give you that advice, but I find that a lot of times we're just so held back by perfection and thinking that, oh, I can't do this unless this is planned, and wanting to do all the research on everything. But I think that there's a quote that said like perfection is the enemy of progress, and I 100% agree with that, because if you spend all your time planning and thinking about things, you might not ever execute them, because there's always 100 reasons not to do something. You can always make an excuse as to why you can't do something, but start looking for reasons as to why you can do something. So for me, I just went forth and figured it out as I went along. And most people are forgiving and they understand, like, I am a very small business. It's really just me head in the cut. I have a couple people that help me out, but it's really
Oh.
90% me.
Oh wow. I meant to tell you, but first of all, I'm just surprised that it's just you because it's very successful.
CEO of one.
You're right.
It sounds very impressive until you realize it's
No,
just
but
me.
it still it actually is more impressive because it's just you. I thought you had a whole team, and I'm like,
Oh
dang.
no, I have, like I said, a couple people that help me out, like a very
Yeah.
not, yeah, like a couple hours a week probably, but
Yeah.
it's just, yeah.
Good for you. And by the way, I meant to side note, when I saw your website, I was like, oh, it makes sense that she worked in graphic
Yeah,
design
yeah,
because
I made my website, just look.
yes, it looks so good. Like the word
Thank
classy came to my mind. Like, this is so classy. Like,
thank you. See,
yeah.
that graphic design background paid off.
Listen, yeah, it definitely did. My second question is, what is your career goal in the next year or two? What are you currently manifesting that you don't mind sharing?
In the next year or two, there's a couple projects that I'd like to be able to sell that I have in development. But other than that, I know I'm gonna be working on a show. So I already know what's gonna happen.
Right. Okay,
I'm
great. That's
gonna
good.
continue working on a show that I'm already working on. But on the side, I do want to sell some shows too.
Nice, nice. How do you, real quick, how do you manage your time? You got a lot going on. Or
Yeah,
should
I
we sign
think
up for that course and that's how we'll know how to manage that?
no, no, you can get this for free. For me, I feel like I actually I do batching a lot. So for social media, for instance, like I'll do a batch of posts, meaning I'll take one day out of the month and I'll create all the posts that I'm going to do for that entire month. So if I'm posting every day, it's not like I'm figuring out what I need to post every day. I have batched it up so it's all ready to go and I just boom 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 can post it. I also
Mm.
do uh this is one thing I don't do, but I should do. Like, other people should do this, even though I don't do this. Ask for help. It's something that I've recently have started to do. Like, I send out a weekly newsletter, and I got someone to help me gather the content for the newsletter. So that's one thing that I don't have to worry about. I would like to delegate more tasks, though. So that's something that I don't even take my own advice, but I should. But I would say plan ahead when you can, and also delegate things that you don't have to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point, and I think it is good advice. So, good for you. Um I have my last segment that I call I fuck with you segment, because it's a shout out segment that I just feel like I just like showing love and shouting out people in our lives that helped us during our coming up journey. So, is there anyone that you would also like to shout out that you also know is a person of color who's coming up in their journey, or maybe someone specific who has helped you on your journey?
Yeah, who would I like to shout out? I would like to shout out my friend Kendra Jordan. She is she used to be Lena's assistant. She's the one that referred me to get my very first job as a writer's assistant on Bridgerton. And I am eternally grateful to Kendra because that job really changed my life. Like, I had a completely different career, completely different life, just a short few years ago. And so my life changed because of her. She also is now, years later, has her own show on Bounce called Finding Happy. So I recommend everyone check out Kendra's show. And she is a wonderful human and love her to death.
Nice. Love that. Finding happy. That sounds like a positive show, which is we need more of those in this this world. That's awesome. Come on. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me on this podcast. I feel like when people listen to it, they're going to learn a lot. And I feel like your representation is very important. And so it's very important that people also make sure that they sign up for In the Cut. I know you're going to rebrand in a few months, but hopefully people will still be able to, sign up and go to your courses. And especially don't forget October 22nd is the time management for writers class, which I really think is going to be beneficial. And it's a topic that I feel like maybe we don't talk about enough. Like, how do we do
Yeah.
all this while we have a full time job? So I think,
You can
yeah.
definitely follow at In the Cut LA on Instagram. All sort of updates, classes, whatever we have going on. I always put it on Instagram first.
Thank you. Thank you, Ray. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.